Great.
Oh, and we have one more guest.
We have one more guest. Hi, hi, Bruce. Welcome. So I just want to, Bruce, this is mostly people from Mercer County, and Bruce is from Temple Shalom, and he is our guest here tonight. So welcome.
Thank you.
So I just want to say that this, hard to believe, but this is now year 7 of Life and Legacy. And we have over 600 promises collectively as a community. So it's really quite amazing. And we should all be very proud of that. What we know is as we move through and we know this from other communities as well, as we move through the life and legacy process, it gets a little harder to have people make promises, because we ask the ones we know who will make promises easily first. So we're really thrilled tonight to have 3 different perspectives from the different roles that people play in organizations to talk about their roles in keeping life and legacy alive in an organization, and also continuing to generate promise makers. So I'm really happy. What I'm going to do is introduce all the speakers at once. And then the order they're going to speak in is Rabbi Korngold, Harold Heft, and Helene, and Amy Rubin. I was looking at Helene on my screen. So first is Rabbi Jay Korngold. Rabbi Korngold has been the spiritual leader at Bethel Synagogue in East Windsor since 1994. He also serves as the treasurer of the Rabbinic Assembly. Rabbi Korngold holds or has held many national, statewide, and local leadership roles in the Rabbinic Assembly, on the New Jersey Cemetery Board, APAC, Israel Bonds, the Masorti Foundation, and on our own local board of rabbis. And obviously, Rabbi Korngold will talk about the role of the rabbi. Harold Heft. Harold is retired from a long career in electronics manufacturing and distribution, with senior management experience in supply chain, logistics, sales, marketing, and engineering. Harold has had a long history in the not-for-profit world. Harold lived in Chicago before he came to our community, where he was involved with not-for-profits. And then when he came to our community, he went on the board of Jewish Family and Children's Service, where he served in many leadership roles, including as president of the board. And now he is the immediate past president at Jewish Family and Children's Service. Amy Rubin began her role as the executive director of Temple Bethel in Hillsborough in 2014, but her relationship with the congregation dates back to 1989, when she and her husband first became members. Amy has served as president, treasurer, trustee of several committees at Temple Bethel prior to being executive director. A Jew by choice, Amy also previously served for 5 years as the director of administration at the Jewish Center of Princeton. So again, my deepest thanks to all 3 of you for being willing to share your thoughts. And Rabbi Korngold, let's begin with you.
You know what, before you start, I'm just going to
Yes.
spotlight everybody. So that way we see each of you. Give me 1 second. And last but not least. Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you, Linda, and thank you, Amy, for putting this together, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Back in May of 1994, which is a long time ago on the one hand, but it seems like yesterday, when I was actually interviewing for the position at Bethel, I remember speaking to June Newman, who was the president at the time, staying at her house for Shabbat in the days when you could actually visit a place as opposed to trying to do interviews on a Zoom screen. And one of the things I was talking to her about was this life and legacy idea. And the reason that I had actually brought it up is because before I came to Beth El, both 4 years as a student and then 1 year after I was ordained, I served Congregation Shaarei Tzedek in New York City, which is the third oldest Ashkenazic congregation in New York City, founded in 1837. And they had these bequests that they kept getting. And but it was like from people they had no idea who they even were. Meaning, as shuls, at that point, the shul's 150 years old. And every once in a while, they would say, oh, we got a letter today from a lawyer. This and this person died. And this person gave a bequest. Was it $5,000? Whatever it was, it doesn't really matter. But what was important was that people had done this. And so I want to thank the foundation, because although my idea that I did discuss in 1994, every other time that I brought it up over the years, it's a great idea. You were the ones that pushed us. So I want to really thank you, because you really made it happen. And then, of course, the response was, well, maybe we should have done this a long time ago. But whatever, that's the kind of the way it works. So the thing I want to talk about is, in terms of the rabbinic role, I think is relationships and personal connections. And I think that the one way you can do that is by being in a congregation, for a long time, where you are able to build those relationships. Whereas when you do kids and baby namings, and their b'nai mitzvah, and then eventually their weddings, and eventually their kids britot, and there does build that connection. And I think that those are really, really important to build on when you are asking people to make a commitment to life and legacy. The other thing that I think is a really important, and it's an important message to get out there, is that it doesn't have to be that everyone has to be very well off in order to do this. I mean, one of the things, Ann Gurnett, who I thank, who's been our life and legacy representative, person running our life and legacy, she's had people who have come there and said, Ann, I really can't do this because I don't have a lot of money like all those other people. And one of the messages I think that we have to get across as a rabbi, but as other people, as part of this process, is that everybody can do this. And the amount may not be the same, but the important thing is that people make that commitment. And one of the ways that I think is also really important is that your board you have to get a buy-in from the board, and that's really, really, really critical. And that you personally have to do this yourself. So I have done this. Leslie and I have done this. I think, like in any kind of giving, if you give yourself, it's a lot easier to sell it to someone else if you do it yourself. But I also think it shows one's commitment to the institution and to the place, whether it be Jewish Family and Children's Service or whether it be a synagogue or whatever that situation may be. The other thing is the idea of keeping in touch with extended family. So especially when you have people that are elderly and they have children wherever they may be, the person may not be doing so well. So I think it's important to try to make a connection with them, and for them to really see how the institution itself is taking care of their loved one. And hopefully that will also help in the process. I think the other thing that I think is critical is, from my perspective, is the idea of really setting the tone from a traditional perspective. The idea that when we come to a synagogue, that there were other people that built for us or planted for us, and that we need to plant for others. That we have to make sure that the institution continues long after we are no longer here, and that our tradition has a long, we'll talk about this later too, has a long legacy in the Jewish world about the idea of that building and to get that message across. But ultimately, what I would say, it's the personal relationships, and it's people understanding that this institution that they care deeply about needs to continue to be here, and that each of us has the ability to really make a difference. And we can do it just by signing up and including the institution or institutions in our plan giving.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was really right on. So Harold.
Well, the first thing I have to say is that Linda made a shidduch with me and with JFCS here. I'd done it for many, many years in the Chicago area. She also made a shidduch with me and my wife, as a matter of fact. That's how I met Martha, so I thank her for
Linda, do you have 2 more of those?
I have only one more. I need one
You
more,
need one
guys.
more
So
that
help
you
me
are
get there.
You're assured of the world to come.
All right.
I
See, very
know.
appropriately for Life and Legacy.
So JFCS here in our community has been an active participant of Life and Legacy since it began 7 years ago. Legacy giving wasn't a focus of our fundraising efforts at the agency at that time, although we did occasionally find ourselves recipients of bequests, occasionally substantial. Our focus had been solely on short-term donations and grants. That's the nature of being an intensively hands-on social service agency, with a board focus on the immediate needs for the community. The agency historically hadn't had an endowment fund of any kind and hadn't made a comprehensive effort to develop future long-term resources. So the advent of Life and Legacy provided us with a framework to start to think about legacy giving, and provided us with the tools and support to actually build interest in our donor base and to begin to achieve results along those lines. So from the outset of our commitment to Life and Legacy, the leadership role was assigned to the immediate past president of the board, which is an ideal posting because that individual typically has broad and deep knowledge and understanding of the agency, and particularly of those who might potentially be interested in participating in legacy giving. So as immediate past president, my role in the last 2 years has been to work with the staff to identify new supporters so I can explore Life and Legacy opportunities with them. And that may be appropriate, may not be appropriate, depending on the person. I also build on my long-term relationships with board colleagues, current and past, to cultivate new prospects through expanded networking. Life and Legacy's incorporated into our board orientation process to encourage new board members to consider participation if they aren't already. Once a year, I present a program at the meeting of the JFCS board, doing a detailed review of the mission and the opportunities they have to participate if they aren't, reporting results up to date, explaining individual and agency commitments that there might be, and answering any questions from the board. I work with our executive director and research development staff, Elaine, hi, to maintain accurate data and contact information for our legacy donors, as well as implementing events and helping draft communication pieces to steward our donors and keep them apprised of the important work that JFCS is doing and will be able to continue to do far into the future because of their foresight and their generosity. Pre-pandemic, we were able to hold special on-site tours of the agency with refreshments for legacy donors and cocktail parties. We also continue to tailor a specific letter for our legacy donors when we make our annual fund drives at Passover and at year end. So now Life and Legacy is a very well-established integral part of our agency's resource development activities. And those efforts are under the auspices of that important standing committee of resource development. And we intend to continue the efforts in this regard to ensure that we have greater long-term revenue streams to support our mission and the wider community.
Oh, Linda, you
Thank
were
you.
muted.
Yeah, right. I keep muting and unmuting myself. Thank you so much, Harold. We really appreciate that. Amy.
So being the staff person that supports the role of the rabbi, the role of the board, I view the most important things that I bring to the table, or that the role of the staff person brings to the table, is influencing the lay agenda and extending the lay reach, and providing the scaffolding for all of the work of the lay folks. And so that, thinking about influencing the agenda, when Life and Legacy first rolled out 7+ years ago, I was working at the Jewish Center, and the leaders that I was working with at that time were not really paying attention. And so, that influencing the agenda was like, okay, well, why don't I see what it's all about and go and do the legwork and bring it back to the lay leaders and, say, okay, I'll fill out the application. Let's see how it goes. And so that influencing the agenda, making sure that the right people are hearing the message is an important part of the staff member's role. Often think about extending the reach, right? So providing the resources so that the lay folks can do the outreach, that we give them more opportunity to be successful in the roles that they're doing, and providing the scaffolding. Everything that a community organization or an agency is doing has to be connected and has to be supporting the mission and bringing all that back together. So you've got, how does that all translate into the day-to-day? It really means managing all the details, making sure the phone numbers are right, making sure the promise forms are scanned and in a place where they're going to be found by a successor. There's a little bit, I was thinking about the balance between keva and kavanah, intention and routine. And my role has a little bit of both, because you need to have all the routine things, the databases, the processes, all the resources and support, letters going out, this and that. But we also need to have the kavanah too. We have to understand the donor's intentions, because sometimes it might be, as much as the rabbi talked about having relationships, it might be me on the phone with a donor, and I need to know that donor well. I need to know what their intention is. I need to know what their hot buttons are in case there are issues. So the other piece that is really important in a staff role is the partnership with the lay and my colleague. So that, if I were working with Rabbi Kornskold and he's out and having a conversation, he's going to keep me in the loop and I'll do the same, so that the relationship with the donor is not in only one place. It's making sure that we're all in relationship with that donor. Personally, I have found that the work to be really valuable, and having been there at the ground floor when the foundation started the work, when I was at the Jewish Center and bringing it with me to Temple Beth El, it's been really an opportunity to, this is holy work. It's really sacred work to work with donors. And all of us have a piece in that. So, my role, extending the reach, influencing the agenda, and providing the scaffolding on which the lay and other professionals can hook their work to.
Amy, thank you. I love the fact that you called it sacred work, because that ties in with what both Harold and the rabbi said about the fact that, this is intergenerational work, and we're building the stability for organizations to continue to do the important work that they do in the community. I have a few questions. So I'm going to start with Harold. Describe how the concept of legacy giving resonates with you personally.
Well, as time goes on, I've found myself more deeply concerned than ever that there be a viable and vibrant Jewish community in Greater Princeton on an ongoing basis for the long term. I'm concerned at both the institutional level and also especially at the broader level, given the demographic and cultural changes that we've seen over the last 20 years. So although I support many organizations now and I work with others who are like-minded to reimagine the Jewish community for the next generations, the opportunity to offer more substantial report when my personal cash flow is no longer an issue, how's that for a euphemism, is quite empowering and satisfying. So being able to give once I'm gone gives me hope that my concerns for the community will be able to be addressed for a long while.
That's great. Rabbi, Amy, do you want to think about that question? What resonates with you personally, Amy?
I'll take a stab at it because Harold's described something that's sort of very institutionally focused, and I think mine is much more personally focused. As a Jew by choice, I didn't have any Jewish grandparents to pass anything down to me. I had to learn how to make harosas from Joan Nathan's Jewish holiday cookbook, right? And so, yes, I had, a Jewish mother-in-law, but mostly I was, figuring things out, and I adopted this rich heritage, and it's really awesome. The whole history of Judaism. I was a religion minor in college, so I studied Jewish history there in an academic pursuit. But when it really was a personal thing, I really fell in love with Judaism, and so while I don't have Jewish grandparents, I really hope to have Jewish grandchildren. And I think about, so that's a very personal thing. I want the richness of Judaism. I want the richness of the synagogue life, the communal life that comes from being a part of a vibrant synagogue community to be their gift in the future. And I was 35, not even 35. I think I was 34 when I put the synagogue in my will. So the notion that it has to be people who are like contemplating their own mortality, that's not where I was. And, at the time I had a corporate job and I was flitting all over the place, traveling on business and, marketing. But it was really coming into a communal role that added so much more richness. So it was like when the topic of legacy came up, and I had lay leaders who weren't really enthusiastic at first, I was like, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this happen.
That's great. Well, and it just shows you how one individual can, be a catalyst for a group. Rabbi?
So I think about there's a Mishnah, the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that teaches Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, that Moses received the Torah from Sinai and passed it on to Joshua, and Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and so on and so forth. And I think that for me, that really resonates with me, with the idea that we're taking this tradition that we received going back to grandparents and great-grandparents and making sure that it really continues, that we're the next link in, just like all the other links, we're the next link to making sure that the tradition continues. So that's on one level. Other level is that both of my parents are Holocaust survivors. And so I kind of look at it that kind of more of I look at it like having a special mission to making sure that Judaism continues to thrive, not only now, but for generations to come.
Thank you all. Those were really very special. Thank you for sharing that. So the next question is, organizational leadership changes every 2 years or so. New board president, new officers. And what do you think are some ways to keep this initiative fresh and to educate new leaders? Amy, do you want to start?
So actually, I was thinking the question might go in a different direction in terms of how do you keep the continuity, and that is a
Well,
big
it's a
part of the-
combination of the continuity and keeping it keeping them
Right.
fresh and connected.
Right. So some of it is, how does an organization handle leadership development anyway? Are there programs, before people get to the point of taking over a key role? What type of inculcation into the organization's minhag are they getting along the way? I've done a leadership development program at Temple Bethel for close to 20 years. I'm surprised to say that. But it does help bring, and so we talk about legacy is now a topic in that program, and how all of those leaders are part of the legacy of a leadership culture. So one piece is, what are those other elements of bringing leaders on board? Making sure that your record keeping is well enough so that somebody who's coming in doesn't have to relearn everything. And that's some of the things that's great about the foundation resources. What resources Grinspoon has provided is that there's a lot there that somebody who's new to the program can come in and absorb and pick up that kind of information. The real piece is making sure people stay motivated. And so looking for the next wave of leaders in those who've made a promise, those who have found this work meaningful. Again, this is really holy work. So somebody who brings that with them is going to bring that energy.
Great. Harold, Rabbi?
I can speak to it a little bit. A lot of resonance with what Amy said. And I talked a little bit about this in my opening statement. But life and legacy should be recognized by your organization as a fundamental ongoing activity and commitment. At JFCS, while it's not part of our mission, we certainly are committed to the idea of family, which includes the idea of generation to generation. So there is a sort of an accepting mindset amongst most of the board members that we recruit of this responsibility going from generation to generation. And we do some technical things as well at JFCS to accomplish this leadership transition and the idea that the life and legacy is part of our fabric. Life and legacy is incorporated into our bylaws. It's a subcommittee in our Standing Resource Development Committee, and it specifically says the immediate past president is the chair of that subcommittee, and it's an acting committee. Life and legacy is included in our new board member orientation package and as part of the orientation that's done. And as I mentioned before, the immediate past president makes at least one major presentation on life and legacy every year. So that's one in every eight meetings. So it's more difficult in that case for the commitment to be forgotten and for the chain to be broken. So assuming that the immediate past president has done his or her job, which fortunately, our mission is pretty steady. There's not a lot of controversy about what we do. People are fairly committed to what it is that JFCS is about. We have pretty solid continuity, not only in terms of mission, but also we have pretty regular flow through the board, through the executive committee. And folks don't suddenly alight as president. They've been on the board for many, many years and been on the executive committee for a requisite number of years. So it's pretty good chance that everybody on the board will, to one extent or another, be educated and aware of the opportunities that Life and Legacy offers the agency.
Great.
So I just want to pick up on what both Amy and Harold said. I think it's actually a two-pronged approach. I mean, I think on the one hand, it's the board level and the leadership, but I also think it's kind of keeping it alive in the congregation as well. So one of the things that we do is we have been for the past few years, we've been putting a letter on the high holiday seats. You know, whether it's Rosh Hashanah, I think it's Yom Kippur, it is Yom Kippur, where and the president will address it very briefly, but the idea is there's a letter on there explaining why it's important to do life and legacy. And we've even had the promise that the foundation put forth that they develop. We have that on the seats as well. So that's number one. The second thing is that when you walk into the synagogue, there's a poster and it lists all of the people that have given, plus the amount of people that are anonymous. We also do a yearly legacy Shabbat where we honor the new people and also recognize the people that have been doing this for years. And in terms of the board, I mean, I agree with Harold and I agree with Amy. I mean, you know, a person generally doesn't just become president overnight unless there's some kind of, I don't know, be a major issue then. So the point is, if they don't know about it by then, there are obviously bigger problems, but I do think it's important for the foundation, whether, I don't know if every year, every other year, to make a presentation, because there are going to be new board members. And one of the things you also don't want to make sure happens, because that does happen, is that, you know, board members have said to me, you know, Rabbi, we've heard about this every single year. So I say, I understand, but there are new people that haven't heard about it. And so they have to learn about it as well. And the other thing I would say is, thinking about this today, is that probably be important for the foundation almost to have a meeting, or, you know, with the incoming president and let's say the EVP, you know, not, you know, just to kind of, you know, because again, you know, you hear about this program, but like when you're on the front lines, when you're the president, the executive vice president, you're now really on the front lines. And so therefore you look at the world a little differently than you might have as a board member or as a vice president. And so I think that those are really, really important. Yes, it's important for the board to know, but it's important for the congregation to always kind of see it. They may not understand it because we've been through this numerous times. And, you know, it sometimes is kind of amazing when people say, oh, I've never heard of this program before. We've only been talking about it for 10 years, but that's why you got to get the word out there and also do it on the individual level as well.
Thank you all. Those are some really great ideas. So what do you think is a key element to the legacy cultivation conversation? Harold, do you want to give that a start? What's a key element to, because you said you talk to people?
Yes, I
Share
do.
with
I
us
talk to
your-
people all the time. And Rabbi touched on this in his opening statement. I think that providing an opportunity for prospective legacy givers to re-envision their estate as something more than just a pass-through for their heirs is key. Family circumstances differ, of course, but showing them that there are many approaches to doing something meaningful for their community or favorite institutions without disinheriting their family is a key. But you have to establish trust with them. These are potentially intimate and private conversations, obviously. So finding the right person to have that conversation is important. It might not be me, it might be another board member, it might be the ED, it might be someone who is a friend of theirs who is already involved with life and legacy. Case histories help. Opportunities for them to talk to others who already participate, invaluable in establishing credibility and confirming the relative ease of making a commitment and building trust. So I would say that's the key. A lot of people don't think that much about what their estate is about, and they're fairly focused. And maybe we'll talk more about it later, but you don't have to be wealthy to do this. There's lots of ways to do something that's meaningful.
Absolutely. And I remember, Harold, you often said that the best part of life and legacy is that some of us may be worth more. Maybe we all live to be
Absolutely.
120
That's right.
at that time. So
That's
I
right.
remember you're saying that often.
And I'll tell you, my favorite comment from you is you always talk about these legacies maturing.
Right, right. So Amy, Rabbi, Amy?
I'll yield to the rabbi this time.
Will that be 30 seconds or a minute? No, I'm joking. I feel like we're in Congress. You're yielding to me. What I would say is, in addition to what Harold was saying, is that to try to get the message across that you can make a difference, and that that difference will continue long after the person is no longer here. And that I think that as much as as people say, well, I keep to myself, I don't really, I think ultimately, I think people do want to make a difference. And I think if we can show them how they can make a difference without it actually A, affecting them at this moment, and B, as Harold said, you can still give plenty of resources to your children, grandchildren, and family, and still help an institution that you care, deeply about. I mean, I think about Ben Genick, who is one of our immediate past presidents twice over, and is in charge and is on our board, and he's in charge of our Future We Can Share campaign, which is like a capital campaign. He always likes to say, I have 4 kids and I'm going to give them 94% or whatever the amount he has. I think it's 94% of what I have. And I'm going to give the synagogue 6%. So the kids are not going to be starving. And he said, and they can live without the 6%. They'll be fine. But I think if you put it in those terms, it's not like you're saying, give Bethel 96% and give your family 4%. We're not saying that. So that's the message that we have to get across. I think you have to kind of dissect it. That's the key. Because I think otherwise it's this big thing. And I think you have to make it relevant to them personally. Amy.
And echoing both of them, my piece is you have to be very donor centric in the approach, right? What is it that the potential donor cares about, and what do they want to see continue, and really sort of picking up on that. And my comment sometimes to the people who say, well, I make sure my kids, I was like, well, what are the lessons turn it back into a donor centric commentary. What lessons do you want them to learn? What values do you want your children to exhibit? And if generosity is one of them, then showing that generosity in an afterlife gift is you're still teaching, and it's part of role modeling for your family as well. So that focusing on what the donor is interested in, and less on here's what you can do for the congregation. That comes, I think, a little bit later, once you establish that they do care about the community and they share the values of the community. Then it's like, okay, here's how you can continue to make a difference. And to Harold's point, that there's many ways to support an organization. In my, part of my estate is I have 3 kids and the temple is my 4th, right? So and the kids know that. I remember one time I had a conversation and my eldest daughter said, "That's my money." And I was like, oh, no, it isn't. And that's where, even in this, it's a teachable moment to your kids to say, and if you're going to be generous and you're going to support the community, and FYI, start thinking about what you want your legacy to be way down the road. So that donor centric is, I think, the most important piece.
Amy, that's a very important point, that it's a learning moment for your children, because they're interested in what's going to happen, not necessarily from a materialist point of view, but you're setting an example.
And
Trust me, my daughter's reaction was materialistic.
Well,
and you're also saying to your family, I think of myself and the promises that I have made, that these are 2 organizations that were pivotal to me in my adult life.
Right.
One was a place where I worked and where I was very committed professionally, and the other is my congregation, where I've been a member for over 35 years. These are, you're absolutely right. That's the donor-centric piece, that this is who you're connected to and what has provided you with satisfaction and relationships in your adult life.
And joy and influence. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So thank
Family
you.
events, okay.
Pardon, Rabbi?
Family events, life cycle events.
Right,
all-
absolutely. Or when now in the pandemic, the 5 women that I walk with, I've told this story to others, the 5 women that I walk with Monday through Friday are all relationships built at my congregation. You know, so those are the things I think that we need to hold dear to us when we think about having that donor centric conversation. And this is our last question for now, and then hopefully some of our participants will have some questions. What is the one goal you would set for your Life and Legacy Committee moving forward?
I can speak to that really quickly. It's an easy one.
Okay, hit it.
Keep your eye on the ball of stewarding your legacy donors.
Mhm.
Obviously, you have to steward all your donors, but the stewarding of legacy donors can be a little more complicated. You know, trying to keep in contact with them, making sure they don't lose interest. You know, people retire, people move, their family needs change, their families needs change. So you have to find ways to create touches. There's a nice technical nonprofit fundraising term, creating touches that are appropriate and particularly focused on the value of the long-term future support of your organization. It has to be handled differently from the year in and year out touches and with existing donors and new donors. So you have to be sure you're making those touches and managing the message properly. There's a different focus when you are contemplating your mortality than when you are raising a family and, you know, hands-on in a community a lot more. So.
Absolutely.
I would say 2 things. I would say setting a specific number of new legacy commitments that you want to get in the year so that there's a goal. I mean, in addition to what Harold said, I agree with that too. And I think the other thing is always trying to keep things fresh so that people like it, that. And I know that's not easy, obviously, but the idea that it's not like same old, to try to do new things so that people, you know, who might have not been committed before will now become committed going forward.
Great.
And for me, mine is managing a leadership turnover more successfully than we've been able to. I have a leader who's been doing the heavy lifting for a long time, and the committee has waxed and waned, and there really isn't somebody to come in behind this person. The model of the past president hasn't really worked for us. The past presidents tend to get pulled into other things, but so for me, that would be it, making sure we successfully bring on more workers, more energy into the committee.
Those are all, I think, really good goals for the committee. And, you know, I just want to say this to everyone who is here. There are things you think we at the foundation can do to help you manage some of those things. You know, please feel free to ask us, to talk to us. We're happy to meet with your team separately. We're certainly happy to come. You know, I've done I've spoken at Bethel Synagogue for the Legacy Shabbat. And I've done other things so that there are, please use us in that way to, help continue to build the legacy, legacy framework for your congregation or agency. Are there any questions from our participants, Amy?
There's none in the chat box, but I think what I'll do is take you guys off of Spotlight, and this way we are all together. And if folks just want to chime in and share their thoughts. Linda, I'm just trying to figure out how to get you.
How to get me gallery?
Oh, here.
Just,
There we go.
If
There I
people
am.
pick
Now I'm
gallery
gallery.
again.
Now we can go to gallery view in your top right, everyone. And
So
we're
one
all-
thing I will say is that the Grinspoon Foundation is very well aware of the need to keep things fresh. And again, they will be opening up their May legacy gathering, which will again be virtual, to all of the participants. So I know that Amy will be, I think you sent some information, but certainly, you know,
Yes.
keep that in mind. They have absolutely great speakers and great ideas. So that's in this coming May.
I sent the save the date earlier this week. I believe it's May 25th, 26th, and 27th. And what's so exciting, just a small plug, is that usually there's about 150, 200 people who make the trip to Springfield every year. But last year, being the pandemic, there were over 800 people watching online sessions. And you can pick and choose
Right.
I had more
daytime and
yeah, I had more success getting people who not really done much work with the people. So, oh, they could like come in and just do 1 or 2 sessions, and I had 5 or 6 people from leadership getting involved, and so it's like the threshold of a participation on that program has come down, and it's so nice to be able to participate and have more people there. It's a great program. If you haven't
Yeah. And
participated,
they really
you
have,
should.
I mean, they really get, national level speakers that, are very high quality. So I strongly recommend it. We will be sending out more, believe me, you don't have to worry. We'll be sending out more information and more reminders. Have no fear. Are there any questions for our panelists or comments?
I do.
Okay, Josh and then Evie.
Sure. Hi. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here and holding this meeting. I found it very informative and the speakers were excellent. Amy, I really thought it was good the way you mentioned sacred work, because I say that every time I walk into a board meeting or now a Zoom meeting. It's the best way to put it. And Harold, the immediate past president's role of the board, designating that role to them, I think is amazing. I think that's something, just like you designate the nominating committee or anything else to another particular immediate past president is really, really good. I'm the fundraiser I'm the fundraising chair of the Jewish Center. And my question is, how do you cultivate a culture for the board members? I'm trying to really inspire the board members. I feel like we're the front runners of the synagogue. And I think it's easier for us as board members to actually project that. And I've tried before to really speak with them, and one-on-one, it doesn't really resonate. And I'm looking to create some kind of overall culture that the board can take and then convey it to the congregation.
So would our speakers like to handle that?
I think Amy's point of donor-centric is part of it. I think it's the nature of congregational boards that people come to the board membership for lots and lots of different reasons. And they may be political, they may be religious, and so on. So there may not be that much of an opportunity to build a common culture beyond perhaps talking about the survival of the congregation, if that happens to be an issue. You're at the Jewish Center, so like many conservative, smaller conservative congregations, that's an issue. So that's one of the ways you can approach it. One of the thoughts that I had while I was listening to Rabbi and Amy is that a lot of times when you think about life and legacy, there's a tendency to focus on your own agency, your own institution, when you are making the pitch, when you're talking about it, and so on. But the fact of the matter is that every agency and institution is part of a broader community fabric. And sometimes the way into that, and again, it could be donor-centric, is to think about how your institution interfaces with other institutions and agencies, and to perhaps get someone interested from a community point of view and say, okay, there's a number of different sorts of mortar that I can pull the bricks together with, and So maybe, as the old business jargon is, a rising tide raises all boats. So that may be, a way to get into it as well. As I said, people join synagogue boards for lots of different reasons. They're invited to synagogue boards for a lot of different reasons. There's different cultures on different synagogue boards, but you have to find a common theme, and it could be, the long-term survival of that particular institution.
Thank you.
So I want to take issue with Harold's response is that I'm not a big fan of making it an existential crisis, right? That people should be, giving so that a community is thriving. If we're asking people to give out of the fear that if we don't have enough, right, it creates a different type of relationship to the donation. Rabbi, help me out. Like last Parsha or the one before, it was giving gifts from your heart, or is that coming up?
Coming up.
Okay. Different than. Okay. So, but different than when you have
Truma, actually.
Truma, right?
From your heart.
From your heart, which is different than how they said go when they were in Egypt, go and take or go and ask stuff. It's a little bit more forceful. Ask stuff for, and then you get to Truma. It's giving from your heart. And so if you think about that place, introducing an existential crisis changes the tone of the gift. And if what you're really trying to create is a culture of philanthropy, your language has to change in all sorts of ways. In the community I serve now, part of it was we changed dues to an annual commitment. And so even just sort of the nomenclature around things, I will expunge the word pay your bill from every email, make your contribution. Like it's all these little kinds of places that reinforce that everything is a gift. Even my sisterhood, I hounded them to get rid of the word dues. So you have to look at all of these little places that you might be reinforcing a transaction culture versus a philanthropy culture.
So I'll respond to that. I agree with you. I agree with you in the abstract and from an ethical and halakhic point of view. However, the reason that you raise money is to get things done.
True.
If you don't raise money, you can't get them done.
But getting stuff done is different than the survival. It's not an existential crisis.
Right. But if you don't have the revenue stream, you're out of business. So.
Right. If you phrase it around mission driven.
Okay. The other, if I could just add, is that the thing that Amy was talking about was that give from what moves you, and every person is going to be moved by something else. So that's just one thing. But Josh, the other thing I was going to just say is, and every institution will obviously react to this very differently, but one thing that would probably shake things up a little bit is hand out legacy forms at a meeting where whether Linda speaks or whoever speaks or Amy or and then basically say, like, we really like everybody to do this, and everyone won't do it, but enough people will do it. And it'll make them feel a little uncomfortable. I mean, we have done this and everyone didn't do it, but we got a fair amount from when we did this. I mean, you can't do this every meeting, obviously. You can do it once every few, but I think that people, that might make a difference, and it'll show that you're serious.
Thank you.
Evie?
Okay, a few things. Part of it will address Joshua's your comment. First thing, the Jewish Center was so fortunate to have Amy as our executive director when we began Life and Legacy. I was part of it, Amy was part of it. And what you said before about doing the structure, I understand so well because you helped us get started and you helped us tremendously. we've had a fair amount of turnover in executive directors, which has been a difficult, I think, for us. I think we have a wonderful executive director right now, and I'm optimistic about Joel's role in there, which will be great. We also, unfortunately, had the change of rabbis, which we have, with the loss of Rabbi Feldman, which is horrible. And I love our interim rabbi, but indeed, he's only an interim rabbi. But what I was going to say, I wanted to go to all 3 new candidate rabbis interviews, because the 2 I got to go to, I asked them about life and legacy and what their thoughts are on that. The point of this is that I think once we have our new rabbi, we start quickly to engage our new rabbi with life and legacy, where we are and how we want to go. The Jewish Center has had a problem with not being able to engage the board, which is not new to this year, unfortunately. And so what you're seeing now is not something that's new. We've had that problem for a while. And what I wanted to say, we've heard from 3 wonderful speakers who've given us good examples, but I also think it's worth talking about places that don't work as well and what can we do. I think the Jewish Center, we have a good foundation of promises. We need a lot more, and we need to continue to grow that number of promises. I think we perhaps can do it once we find out who our new rabbi is, and we sort of almost have a reset and recommit that way. I guess that was less of a question, but the question really was how we need to consider situations that don't work. Listening to our 3 panelists, I heard all wonderful things, and you all gave me good ideas. But the reality is we also face congregations where all of that doesn't work. The idea of the past president taking the role of the head of the committee has only worked partially. We've had one past president who's been working on it for a while, and he has his own problems or whatever, a wonderful person, and you all know who I'm referring to. But and then other people have different responsibilities. So what sounds great in theory doesn't always work. And we've had a past president who's not involved at all, and we know who that is too. So all these ideas that are put in place are often hard to enact. And I
I think one of the things, you're absolutely right. Different organizations are different in their capacity to engage donors. It varies tremendously, but it doesn't mean you don't rethink how you can institutionalize something. So, is it maybe not at the Jewish Center a past president, but it's a portfolio a trustee gets? Or, what are some ways, because ironically, the Jewish Center is the institution that has the most promises in our community.
Sorry.
So what are some things to rethink? One of the, how any one individual, organization can do exactly what you're talking about. What's a reset? Organizations need resets all the time. And actually, I personally am a big believer in resets because, the way you do things, may continue for a while, but then maybe it doesn't work. Maybe there's a new issue that you need to address. And so, perhaps with the coming of a new rabbi, that's a great opportunity for a reset, for getting something reorganized. The other thing I was going to say, which we really haven't talked about as much, is the one thing that I thought was so terrific when the Life and Legacy program began was how many of the community institutions participated. When you went to those early trainings, you actually saw people from all over the community. It was one of the few things that it wasn't like some major leader died and we all came to a service together. It was one of the few things that we all did together. The institutions, the agencies, as well as the congregations. And one of the things that actually flowed from that was gifts that went to more than one group. And I just want us to think about that, because as much as we obviously want to give to our group, we also want to remember that if somebody is generous and connected to more than one place, that that we should be encouraging that as well. We, chances are we know that. So we know, we just have to remind ourselves, if we're asking a donor at JFCS or at Greenwood House or at a congregation, I know you're also involved, this is sort of like a one-stop shop. Here's the form, and you can check off all of the places that are close to you, and you will all be getting our legacy newsletter in a couple of days, I think. And it highlights Jackie Bowden of blessed memory. And thank you to Anne, who wrote an article about Jackie. But Jackie, was very connected to her congregation, Bethel Synagogue, but she was also extremely connected to Jewish Family and Children's Service. And so those were her two things that she was committed to, that enriched her life. And so she left legacy commitments, legacy promises to both of them. And I just think that's another way, Evie, of engaging, of, making sure that all of us are talking not just about ourselves, but also reminding everyone that this promise card can include other organizations as well. Because I suspect that there are people who are at Greenwood House or JFCS or the Federation who get solicited, who are also really important, caring members of the Jewish Center. Yeah, Rabbi.
I just want to add two things. One is to Evelyn and the Jewish Center. Here's the one thing I would just say. I agree with you. It could be a reset, but I also think that, the new person, whoever that person is going to be a little overwhelmed, to say the least, with dealing with the day-to-day. And it's like, okay, life and legacy, like that is not going to be on the burner on the first month, week, year, probably. But here's what I do think is important, because so there may be other people that need to carry the ball in the beginning, but I do think that it's important, whoever the person is, because some people are going to know about it. Some people are going to have no clue what you're talking about, because in their community, wherever they came from, they may have not done this kind of thing, is to educate the person and say, we're going to pick this up at some point, should at least know about it, because they should know about it. But I do think that it's also going to be hard for a person in the beginning. They have so many other priorities, so I'm just saying that, you might want to set the bar on that one a little lower.
I hear what you're saying. I think I know exactly what you're saying. It's not the first priority. I guess what I hopefully envision after a while, or at some point, almost as a stewardship thing, where our life and legacy donors, we do something on Zoom or whatever to meet the new rabbi, to give.
Right, that's exactly right.
That's
Not so
beautiful.
much a solicitation at all.
That is great.
It's a stewardship thing. See, these are our congregants who've made promises, and we just want you to to meet our new rabbi.
That's great. I think
Let me
that's
ask
great.
you, as the rabbi, would that be acceptable? Do you?
That'd
think
be amazing.
A
Yeah,
new
yeah.
rabbi.
That's great, because you want to meet people, and considering we're not really meeting people in person, this would be that would be a great thing to do.
And
Absolutely.
you know that these people have a commitment. They've made a commitment. to the
Absolutely,
synagogue.
absolutely.
Right.
Most
And
of
that
them are
also
older.
clues the new rabbi into the fact that they are
We can-
people who are
and
committed.
we can do that. We could
Yeah,
do
there
that.
for sure. I definitely agree. And the other thing, I just want to add one more thing. Linda, you were talking about various organizations, and doesn't have to just be one. So, after over 100 years, the Rabbinical Assembly, my other hat is the treasurer of the Rabbinical Assembly, the International Organization of Conservative Rabbis. We are now in the process of starting kind of a life and legacy program there too, because there are plenty of rabbis that could also include, just like include with their congregation or Jewish Family Service or whatever, can also include the Rabbinical Assembly. And it's something that also has never been done before. So, I agree with you. You don't have to just give to one organization. That was the point.
I just want to jump.
Amy? Wait, sorry.
I was
Amy.
going to give Evie a suggestion. So when you have that meet and greet with the rabbi, with the new rabbi, so often those things are about the getting to know the new rabbi. I encourage you to consider flipping it on its head and let the rabbi get to know all the people and ask the people as they come to share why they made their promise to the Jewish Center. Because part of it is that new rabbi has to learn about what is the richness of the Jewish Center, what makes this a great place. And in the process, it'll be, dropping the seeds of this is a great program, and as the rabbi is thinking about how to foster the culture of the community. So
Good
flip it around a little
I think
bit.
that's great, Amy. I think
Yeah.
that's
Good
great.
idea.
Doesn't have to be a long thing, a 2-minute, each person gets a minute, says their thing. I
Well,
think it's
right,
great.
exactly. Thank you. Those were all
Great
great
idea.
suggestions. Are there other comments or questions?
Hello?
Harvey?
Yes, I'd just like to say that thank everyone for putting this together and the speakers, because this is very timely for me. I was involved with Or Hadash as the chairperson for Legacy for 6 years. And we're going to change this year. And part of the reason is because of JFED Shaw, that there's going to be a change there. And we figured it would be very helpful for new people to do all the training, since I've been through it all. But the one issue that I'm having, which is very germane to what's discussed here, is, well, who's going to take over for me? And we've had a lot of difficulty, and we've come up, well, it should really be, maybe we should ask the immediate past president, who's very overwhelmed right now, but would be perfect because she was on my legacy team. So I had the benefit when we started 6 years ago, I became a board member and had 3 board members join my committee. So we were 4 of, 13 or 14 board members on the legacy committee.
Right.
And consequently, we had a lot of success over the course of time. We have over 25% of our synagogue on Life and Legacy. And but now I'm just in the middle of this because I want to make sure I'm not that I'm leaving, but I want to have it in good condition.
You want to pass the baton.
I want to pass the baton. So now, at the moment, this is not finalized, but we're talking about, we want to leave it, we're thinking it'll be the first or second vice president, because, or it could also be the past president, but those are the options. And I'm loving that, because the second vice president would be, I think, perfect for this position. But I'm in the middle of that. And what I'm thinking about is, why didn't I ever really give this much thought for the last 6 years? Now I'm giving it the thought because the time is here, and we want the new people to have the benefit of the training that thank you all for helping with that JFED short training. And so we want to make it happen. But I think that this has been helpful to me in thinking through what we need to do.
Well, that's great. So what Harvey's referring to is, I think many of you saw in our last newsletter, we've developed a partnership with the Jewish community of Somerset, Hundred, and Warren, and we will be training 11 of their organizations, their JFS, their Federation, and their JCC, and congregations in Life and Legacy.
Right. And
So
the
we're
new
very
committee,
excited about
or
that.
committee members will be have the benefit of actually being 15, 20 minutes away from where they have to go. I was always over an hour.
Right, right. Now we're over an hour. Now, but fortunately, everything is on Zoom, so we're really just down the
Yeah,
hall.
now we're all close.
So are there any other comments, questions? Well, thank you all.
Yeah, my only thought was about putting the responsibility on one of the automatically on one of the vice presidents or the immediate past president. Is a lot of it depends on the personality of the person that you are assigning it to. And we're wrestling with this at Bethel right now, trying to find the right person in the right demographic with the right motivation and the right ability to sell, to soft sell. I don't think there's an automatic way to do it. That's my point. We're just kind of looking through our membership, as well as the board, to see who the right person is right now. Nothing
You know,
automatic.
I think, Skip, you're bringing up a good point. A lot of the legacy teams have been in place for a long time. And it really is only Jewish Family Service that has this sort of system of the past president. And that's, that sort of speaks to Amy's leadership training, leadership development, creating some sort of leadership development and then identifying from that leadership training someone for whom this is a good fit. And we're certainly happy to talk to individual communities, congregations about some sort of plan.
So maybe, I mean, I think Skip's point is a really good point. Skip, maybe it has to almost be like a combination that like it fits under the purview of, let's say it's the immediate past president, but they don't have to do it themselves.
Right.
But at least there's like some kind of institutional, so like it's not like you just have to find your successor. There's an automatic, but then you got it, like you said, you got to mold find the right person for that particular position.
Right.
And
And
staff has skin in it also. I mean, at least at JFCS, we do have research development and they have responsibilities for paying attention to life and legacy.
Right. But I also think that, one of the things we've learned over the 7 years is that life and legacy does better when the responsibility for life and legacy is attached to a board position. Whether it's the past president, whether it's if it's somehow attached to the fundraising chair who sits on the board. But when the people responsible for life and legacy have a board position, then they have the forum of the board. When life and legacy is sort of an adjunct and a side committee, so to speak, it is less compelling to board members, and board members are not always paying attention. That person is always at your board meeting, and they always make a report at a board meeting. There's something to be said for that. So I think board connection, board involvement is truly key.
But it's also motivational in that they hear the financial situation, positive, negative, whatever, and that can, continue to pick up on like what Harold was saying, the idea of really getting that message out there.
Right.
Linda, I think that's very valuable advice.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And then when you do have a legacy promise that's realized or matures, then, if that person's sitting on the board, they're also announcing it. They're saying, we're sad to announce that, Jackie Bowden of blessed memory has passed away, but we're really, Jackie was a devoted congregant and she left a legacy gift to our community. And that just, that's role model after role model after role model of someone who has created a legacy gift.
Absolutely.
Are there any?
Linda, I'm conscious of the time. I know we've gone a little bit over than our 1 hour commitment.
So if there are no other questions, I want to thank everyone for coming. I just want to remind everyone that on February 10th at 10 a.m., we will have, that's in the morning, it's a daytime program. We will have the second in our Ethical Wills series. We had Rabbi Abigail True in November who kicked off talking about letters from the heart. And I will be doing more of a practical, how you get started, what are some of the questions you ask yourself. Ethical wills do not have to be written down in the form of a letter. If you're good at it, you can do a multimedia presentation. So feel free to pass the word, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you for putting this together. It was great.
Yes, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Everyone.
A special
lot.
thanks to Rabbi Kornskold, Harold Hepp, and Amy Rubin. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, everyone. It's a great.
Good night.
Great to
night.
be part of the program.
Good to see you all.
Yeah.
Take care.
Good to see some old friends, Helene and Evie. So good to see you.
Nice job, Linda. Nice job, Amy.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Amy.
Good night.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good night.
Hey.
Right.
Bye.
Good night.
Is Linda still there? Yeah.
Yeah, Amy, Joyce and I are going to connect for a couple of minutes.
Okay, great.
Not-
I was gonna tell Evie something, but I'll catch her offline.
I think it was a great program. It's unfortunate more people weren't there.
I know.
Right, You were
Am I
you were
still being
preaching to the
recorded?
You know what?
choir.
Here's the thing. I'm recording, and the best way for this to end the recording is for me to end the Zoom. That's how
All
I
right, so
practiced it.
I'll just call you on the
Linda,
phone.
just call me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you both. Have a good
Good
night.
night.